these are the lines of code that you are seeing. It's 20 lines, almost. So let me just zoom in a bit. Yeah. So the first line that you are seeing just starts with 2 hyphens. So generally we define a comment using 2 hyphens. Like here is a command that we are seeing. So it's common to like any programming language. Like in Python we define a comment using hash, but in this case we define it using hyphens, similar to C or Java or JavaScript. Like it's a single line comment, but in the very first line it's not a general comment, but it's like defining the license that under which we want to serve our smart contract. So it's the best practice or like a general advice that like if I remove this particular line, then I will see a warning over here. So before publishing, consider adding a comment containing SPDX license identifier and the name of the license provider to each source file. So for non-open source code, you can just use unlicensed, but like if you are deploying it on chain, then you can just use MIT as the open source license. Let me just undo it. So there is a list of various licenses that can be used, like that you will see, that you will come across in various smart contracts that you will interact in future, that you will interact with in future. But in our case, we are using, let me just find MIT one. Yeah, this one, the first one, MIT license, which is an open source license. So, and the next line, let me just close this one. And the next line that you are seeing is defining the version of the Solidity that we are using in our contract. It's 0.8.7. So there are various versions like 8.1 or like starting from 0.4 or something, and then goes up to 0.8.28, which is the latest one as of now. But in this case, we are using 0.8.7. So similar to what version we are using over here, we have to use the same version while compiling. So in the Solidity compiler, when you select on this particular option in the left menu, then you will see 0.8.7 is selected. You will see like all the versions all the way from 0.1.1 to 0.8.28, but in our case we are using 0.8.7. so like whatever we want to use over here, so 0. So it just automatically selecting it because we have selected auto compile. Let me just use 0.8.24, so it will show an error, like because the versions are not getting matched, so considered to be strictly less than the released version. So that's why if we need to define 0.8.24 here. If we select 8.24, 0.8.24, so then the error will go away. So we can use any version, and then so like whatever version we are using over here, we have to define in the compiler. And there is also like another syntax to define the version that you will see in the documentation, like this, which means like any version from 0.7 to 0.9 will work, like less than 0.9 will work. But the best practice is to use the strict versioning, because there might be some conflicts with other version. Like in your case, if you define something related to this version only, then it might get conflict with the latest version or with the prior versions, like the previous ones. So it's advised to use the strict versioning, like where you don't define any greater than or less than symbols, and also the caret symbols. The caret symbols are generally used to, so like if we use any compiler version less than 0.25, then it will work. But if we use any compiler less than 0.8.24, then it will show an error, because we have defined this caret. So like any version above, like any version above 8.24 and also including 8.24 will work. So we can just remove this as well, because as I have already mentioned, it's advised to use the strict versioning. And the thing that you are seeing over here is a multi-line comment, like the way I think you might have seen similar syntax in C, Java, JavaScript as well. It's a multi-line comment. So in order to do that, so first we have to read like what's written in this comment. So it's written that it's an example contact that uses unaudited code. So it's advised to not use this code in production. So you have to make sure that you will only deploy this test code or the test contact on testnet or on the local environment. So how to produce this kind of comment? Let me just give you an example. So suppose you are writing, this is my comment 1 and comment 2 and comment 3. So how are you supposed to comment this? So either you can do like you can just select everything and then just do command plus hyphen or control plus hyphen in case of Windows, or command plus hyphen in case of Mac. So like it will just generate multiple single line comments and it will just comment it in one go. But how to generate the similar syntax like for multi-line strictly? So either you can undo it and then you can do it manually, like you can just write asterisk and then you can write asterisk over here, so it will just generate a multi-line comment. But how to do it using the command? You can just select everything and do shift plus option plus A, or shift plus option plus A in case of Mac, or shift plus alt plus A in case of Windows or Linux users. So it will just do this comment, multi-line one. And for multiple single lines, as I mentioned, you can just simply do selecting and then command plus hyphen or control plus hyphen. Let me just remove this comment, and then we come to this line called, which is defining our contact and the name of the contact. So it's similar to defining a class and the name of the class, and then the curly bracket starts, and then that's the scope of this particular contact from line 10, starts from line 10 and ending at line 20. So yeah, and similar to like the way we define class in Java, we like it's recommended to use uppercase letter, like starting with the uppercase letter. So if we define it with lowercase, then also it's fine, it will not show any error, but it's advised to write the uppercase. And then we are defining this string called, and like naming it as message. We can name it as like as anything, but whatever we are naming over over here, then it will just show this error because we haven't defined message 1. So we have to change it to message 1 in this case, but we are defining it as message, so it's fine like this. So if you want to learn about more types, like what other data types that you can use, you can just go to this Solidity by example website, like which is a brilliant website for beginners to learn, or even for intermediate and advanced developers as well, to learn about various things. Here you can see like the primitive data types that are there in Solidity. Let me just switch to the dark mode. So you can see various types like uint, like the unsigned integer types. Uint means unsigned integer, and then you are seeing the 8 to 56, like the number of bytes, like the number of bits that a particular unsigned integer can take. And then you are seeing the signed integers, and then you are seeing this type called address, and then you are seeing this bytes, which can be also like bytes 1, bytes 2, bytes 32, bytes 4, and boolean. So these are the primitive types, and then you can also read about other types as well, constants, variables. So I would recommend you to check this website called Solidity by example for a thorough documentation on the solidity syntax and data types and everything related to solidity. After that, we will see this constructor. So constructor is the very first thing that will be executed when we deploy our contract. So in case of like Java, like when we define the constructor, it's the very first thing that will be executed when we basically run the program. It's just a part of the class, and the very first thing that will be executed when we define the object of the class. So whenever we define the object, then it will invoke the constructor. So in this case also, when we deploy this particular contract instance, then the constructor is the first thing that will be executed, and it's generally used to assign the storage, like the storage variable. So you might be wondering the term storage variable. So that's the term that we use to define the variables that are defined like outside any function, or basically which are global to this particular contract, like which are having the scope of the entire contract, are considered as storage variables. So here you can see message is the storage variable of type string. So constructors are generally used to assign values to the storage variables. And then we are updating this storage variable in this update message function, and the parameter that you are seeing over here in this constructor is of type memory. So it means it will be only limited to this particular scope of the constructor, and it's stored in the memory. It's not stored in the storage. So you can read about more about these terminologies from various documentations like storage and memory. So but for the general knowledge, like the string memory is basically limited to that particular scope itself. So in this case, the new message, which is of type memory, it's limited to the scope of this particular function called update message. So now what it's doing, basically it's just assigning this storage variable of with the name of message as whatever we are passing in this constructor while deploying the contract. So it will be assigned to this message variable, and then while updating, whatever we are passing while calling this function will be assigned to this message. So the message will be updated. So the message variable, like the whatever value was stored previously, will be updated to this new message value. So it's a simple contract. I hope it's clear to you. Now we will go to basically interact with this contract, deploying and everything.